Imagine trying to plug an entire skyscraper full of electronics. I mean, every computer, every server, every refrigerator.
Right.
Imagine trying to plug all of that into a single standard wall outlet in your living room.
They would immediately trip the breaker or start a fire.
Exactly. And that is the exact physics problem the artificial intelligence boom is creating for the global power grid right now.
Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are looking at the global briefing for Thursday, July 9, 2026. And our mission for you today is to connect the dots.
Yeah, there's a lot to connect today.
There really is.
Yeah.
We're going to trace the line from global geopolitical friction all the way to the physical limits of our booming technology sector. And then we're going to figure out how these massive earth-shifting events actually land in our local schools, our hospitals, and, our culture.
Because looking at the sheer scope of the sources for today's briefing, a very clear theme emerges.
It's a story about bottlenecks and breakthroughs. We're watching human ambition just collide at full speed with the physical limitations of our planet and our infrastructure.
Right.
But at the same time, we're seeing these incredible moments where we actually manage to push the absolute boundaries of science and medicine despite all of that friction.
Yeah, it's a wild contrast. So let's start with the macro picture, because the geopolitical stage is incredibly loud right now. NATO leaders just wrapped up a 2-day summit in Ankara, Turkey, and there's a lot of friction there.
To put it mildly, yeah.
Right. The alliance is dealing with disputes over defense spending, strategic control over Greenland, and the ongoing situation with Iran.
And the stakes at this specific summit are unusually high. When you look at the debate over Greenland, for example,
Yeah, Greenland.
it's not just a territorial squabble, it's about shifting global realities. I mean, as the Arctic ice melts, new shipping lanes are opening up,
Sure.
and access to massive deposits of rare earth minerals is suddenly in play. So strategic control there is a vital long-term play for the alliance.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about the rare earth minerals.
Yeah, it changes everything. And then you have the immediate, acute pressure regarding Iran. The NATO Secretary General has publicly backed fresh U.S. airstrikes, literally calling them necessary.
Right.
And this is happening right as the interim ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is teetering.
And right in the middle of this high-stakes diplomatic maneuvering, you have the host, President Erdogan, actively brokering these showcase arms deals.
Yes.
It looks like an attempt to smooth over some of the regional friction with hardware. Meanwhile, the briefing notes the Trump administration is signaling that the U.S. relationship with the broader alliance remains fragile.
Right.
And just to be clear for the listener, we are strictly looking at the mechanics of the summit here from the briefing. Totally impartial.
Exactly. Just the facts on the ground.
Right. And the fact is, the summit ended without a total rupture. But the cohesion of the alliance heading into the fall is just an open question. It's clear the diplomatic bandwidth is stretched incredibly thin right now.
And that stretched bandwidth is the critical point here. Because political tension doesn't just exist in a vacuum in Ankara, It ties up the exact same international systems and budgets that are supposed to handle global humanitarian crises.
Yeah.
Like, the United Nations just issued a sobering warning about Sudan.
I was reading that UN report in the briefing, and the numbers are just devastating.
They really are.
Sudan remains the world's largest humanitarian crisis. And the UN relief chief noted that at least 330 children were killed or injured just in the first 6 months of 2026.
It's an absolute logistical and humanitarian nightmare. Aid agencies are dealing with mass displacement, collapsing health services, and severe access restrictions. Delivering relief is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
But the underlying bottleneck here, going back to our theme, is global attention and resources.
Because everyone is looking elsewhere.
Right, because the international community's bandwidth is so limited, this crisis in Sudan is actively competing for resources with the conflicts in Ukraine and the West Bank. The global humanitarian budget is simply being pulled in way too many directions at once.
And while that human toll is staggering, the planet itself is adding to the logistical strain. Over in China, President Xi Jinping just ordered all-out emergency efforts following days of torrential rain linked to Typhoon Maysak.
Yes.
The briefing details deadly flooding and landslides across Guangxi and several central provinces.
And the sheer scale of the required response tells you everything you need to know about the severity.
Yeah.
I mean, the central government had to deploy over 8,000 rescuers.
Oh, 8,000.
And 5,700 boats. They're pouring tens of millions of yuan into restoring basic facilities,
Hmm.
just fixing roads and schools so life can even resume. Hubei alone received 50 million yuan, which is about $7.4 million, purely for immediate recovery. It really highlights this punishing stretch of extreme weather events across Asia this summer. It just demands massive state resources to manage.
It really feels like everything on the surface of the planet is boiling over right now, politically and meteorologically. It's chaotic, it's loud, and it demands immediate attention.
Yeah.
But then, buried in the briefing, there's this incredible pivot to something happening quietly, 2 miles underwater.
Oh, this story.
Yeah, completely removed from all this human chaos, scientists just watched a mid-ocean ridge split apart in real time.
What's fascinating here is the sheer contrast in timescales.
Mhm.
Up on the surface, we're tracking news cycles, summits, and typhoons by the hour.
Right, constantly refreshing our feeds.
Exactly. Down there, researchers directly observe tectonic plates pulling apart, literally watching fresh lava emerge as the seafloor widened beneath the waves.
That is just incredible.
It's a fundamental geological process that normally unfolds invisibly over thousands of years, and they caught it happening live on camera.
It's just wild to think about. We get so caught up in our daily crises that we forget the planet is still actively building itself, completely independent of our schedule.
Yeah?
Sometimes the biggest physical change happening on Earth today is occurring 2 miles beneath the ocean, and it has absolutely nothing to do with us.
And patient, careful science is the only thing that allows us to glimpse that reality. It puts our human crises into perspective. The ground under our feet is operating on a scale of millions of years while we're trying to manage budgets quarter by quarter.
Which actually brings us to our next major bottleneck. We just talked about physical constraints in geopolitics and natural disasters, but that exact same friction over physical resources is defining the tech world right now.
Absolutely.
Artificial intelligence is hitting a massive physical wall.
It is. The AI boom has fundamentally shifted from a software story to an infrastructure story. The sheer energy appetite of these new AI models is forcing a complete rethink of the electric grid.
Right, going back to that skyscraper analogy I mentioned at the start, we constantly talk about the cloud as if it's this invisible, magical realm floating above us.
Right, just out in the ether.
Yeah. Yeah. But the cloud lives in massive data centers, and dropping a state-of-the-art AI data center into a local town's grid is literally like trying to plug a skyscraper's worth of electronics into a standard power strip.
The numbers back that up completely. Traditional data centers might draw maybe 10 or 20 megawatts.
Okay.
These new AI facilities, packed with dense, power-hungry processors running constantly, they're drawing hundreds of megawatts per site.
Hundreds. Wow.
Yeah, and they generate immense heat, which requires massive cooling systems, which in turn require even more power. The real bottleneck to AI growth isn't a shortage of computer chips anymore. It's the physical capacity of the electrical grid to generate and deliver that much juice.
And while the utility engineers are sweating over the physical limits of the grid, the policymakers are creating their own kind of friction. The briefing details this incredible policy whiplash coming out of Washington regarding AI regulation.
It has been a regulatory roller coaster for the industry. The Trump administration initially asked leading AI labs to hold back their most powerful models under a Frontier AI executive order.
And just for context, Frontier AI refers to the absolute cutting edge, right?
Yes, the most advanced large-scale models that can sometimes exhibit unpredictable capabilities. The administration hit the brakes on those and then completely reversed course and allowed them.
Which has to make long-term planning for these tech companies a total nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
But despite that stop-and-go confusion, the floodgates have absolutely burst open today. OpenAI is globally launching GPT 5.6, and they're releasing 3 different variants called Sol, Terra, and Luna.
Right.
And simultaneously, the Commerce Department just lifted export restrictions on Anthropic's most powerful models, including a highly secretive one dubbed Mythos.
And listing those export controls is a massive shift.
Right.
Those restrictions are usually in place for national security reasons, to prevent adversaries from accessing advanced technological capabilities.
Sure.
Loosening them means we're about to see a drastically accelerated international and enterprise deployment of these advanced models. It reopens a massive competitive sprint at the very top of the market.
So what does this all mean? If these massive AI data centers are drawing hundreds of megawatts and the government is greenlighting faster, broader deployment, what does that actually mean for the listener? Am I going to see this arms race show up on my monthly power bill?
It's highly likely that you will, yeah.
Uh,
The ripple effects are entirely local. If
yeah.
a hyperscale AI data center moves into your region, it means tighter competition for electricity.
Right.
Utility companies have to scramble to build new infrastructure to meet that demand, and those costs are often passed down to consumers. So the national security debates and commercial timelines happening in Washington and Silicon Valley collide directly with local energy costs and grid reliability in your hometown.
And that trickle-down effect doesn't stop at the power grid either. When Washington changes AI rules or a lab releases a massive new model, it eventually lands right on the desk of local school superintendents and IT teams.
Yeah, this is a huge issue. The federal government is leaning incredibly hard into bringing AI into K-12 classrooms right now.
Right.
There's a new executive order directing agencies to expand AI education, and the Education Department is actually steering federal grant priorities toward AI skills.
Hmm.
They're essentially telling districts that if they want certain funding, they need to build in AI literacy and teacher training.
Okay, I have to push back on this federal priority, though, because based on the realities outlined in the briefing, it sounds like Washington is mandating schools to install a state-of-the-art AI smart home system,
Right.
while the front door of the school's network is wide open and the locks are completely broken.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The push for flashy new generative AI tools is happening simultaneously with a massive critical cybersecurity crisis in education. A 2026 report just found that more than 1 in 2 U.S. public K-12 schools have now experienced a cybersecurity breach.
Over half of them.
Over half.
That is genuinely terrifying. I mean, we aren't just talking about stolen lesson plans here. Schools hold children's highly sensitive records, medical data, disciplinary files, social security numbers.
And it's become the new normal. You have underfunded, overworked school IT teams who are now facing AI supercharged phishing and ransomware attacks.
Right. The attackers are using AI too.
Exactly. Security experts are practically begging these districts to ignore the flashy new AI tools and just prioritize basic network hygiene, identity protection, multi-factor authentication, staff training, because a single breach can completely shut down a district's ability to operate and teach for weeks.
And it's not like the big tech giants have this figured out either, you know? The wider cyber threat landscape is brutal right now.
Oh, yeah.
The briefing notes that Accenture, which is a massive global consulting firm, they just confirmed a data breach after a hacker offered their stolen data for sale on a forum.
And when a firm as well-resourced as Accenture gets breached, it highlights the recurring nightmare of third-party supply chain risk.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for any downstream clients or vendors listening, it's a stark reminder that your network is only as secure as the external partners who have access to it.
Right. And speaking of securing networks, there are 2 massive technical warnings in today's briefing for the IT professionals listening. First, an Adobe Cold Fusion flaw was just added to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's must-patch list.
And that one is critical because it allows for arbitrary code execution.
Right.
For those outside of IT, arbitrary code execution basically means a hacker can bypass your controls and run their own software directly on your server, effectively treating your machine as their own.
Wow.
Yeah, that's as bad as it gets.
But the most urgent warning today is a Palo Alto Network's firewall flaw.
Yes. Tracked as CVE 2026-0257.
Okay.
This is an authentication bypass flaw in the Global Protect portal of Palo Alto Network's firewalls. To use your earlier analogy about the broken locks, an authentication bypass essentially means the digital bouncer guarding the front door has been tricked into looking the other way, while hackers walk right past the VIP rope.
They don't even need a stolen password. They just walk right in.
Exactly. And the reason this is a 5-alarm fire is that attackers are actively exploiting it right now in the wild. If your organization has an internet-facing Global Protect portal, you need to patch it immediately and actively hunt your network for signs that someone is already inside.
Man, it is a relentlessly chaotic digital world out there.
It really is.
But despite the failing power grids, the active cyber threats, and all the geopolitical tension in Ankara we talked about earlier, we still find ways to come together and just exist in culture.
Yeah, humans have a remarkable capacity for finding joy and shared experience right in the middle of chaos.
We do. Just look at the 2026 World Cup. It is pure chaotic joy right now. All 3 host nations, The US, Mexico, and Canada have been knocked out in shocking fashion.
Total shock.
Right. The US fell to Belgium, Mexico lost to England, and Canada was eliminated by Morocco. So we have a tournament barreling forward without a single home team left in the bracket.
Yet, if you look at the cultural response, the fans are absolutely loving it.
They are.
Visiting supporters from all over the globe are keeping it incredibly festive. Social media is flooded with these great culture shock moments where international fans are experiencing American stadium tailgates and hospitality for the first time.
Yeah.
It's become this bright, good-natured spot on the internet.
And that shared digital feed where we're all watching sports highlights is also hosting this bizarre modern whiplash.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, right next to a video of a tailgate, you've got Kanye West back in the news, setting social media buzzing by clarifying a viral post on X.
Right.
And right beneath that, you have millions of users rushing to test the new GPT 5.6 variants we talked about earlier, making jokes about how impossible it is to keep up with the relentless pace of these AI model releases.
It perfectly encapsulates the modern online experience. Sports heartbreak, celebrity commentary, and frontier artificial intelligence, all trending side by side, competing for the exact same few seconds of our attention.
But while everyone is distracted by soccer brackets and chatbots, that exact same newsfeed is quietly hosting what might be the most profound story of the day.
Yeah, this is huge.
Scientists have just reported a genuine breakthrough in an experimental therapy for one of the deadliest, most treatment-resistant forms of brain cancer.
It's an incredibly vital piece of news. Brain cancer has historically been notoriously difficult to treat, largely because of the blood-brain barrier.
Right.
That's the brain's natural defense mechanism that prevents most drugs and therapies from actually reaching the tumor.
Which makes sense evolutionarily. I mean, the brain wants to keep foreign substances out, but it makes delivering medicine incredibly frustrating.
Precisely. But these early results are showing that this new experimental therapy is making progress against tumors that have resisted all conventional treatment.
Wow.
It is offering fresh, tangible hope to patients who currently have almost zero medical options. The global scientific community is watching these trials incredibly closely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This maps perfectly back to the ocean floor discovery we discussed at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Yeah, you're right.
Both of these stories, the deep sea lava and this cancer therapy, are examples of quiet, painstaking work happening completely behind the scenes. While the world argues over defense spending and AI export policies, there are researchers in labs and on books fundamentally changing our understanding of what is possible, slowly chipping away at the word incurable.
And those stories rarely generate the same viral momentum as a celebrity post or a sports upset. But for the families facing that specific medical diagnosis, it is unquestionably the most important news of the decade. It's a powerful reminder that the most significant human progress isn't always the loudest thing in the room.
Well said. What a massive, varied scope of information we've covered today. We started with the geopolitical friction and diplomatic maneuvering in Ankara, and contrasted that with tectonic plates pulling apart to form new ocean floor 2 miles underwater.
Yeah.
We unpacked the physics of how the AI boom is straining our local power grids, and how those same technological pressures are crashing into underfunded K-12 school systems, dealing with rampant cyber attacks and broken digital locks. And we wrapped up with the cultural joy of a hostless World Cup and a genuine, quiet beacon of hope for brain cancer research.
And looking at all those pieces together raises a really important question, something for you to consider long after we wrap up today. We spent a lot of time discussing AI consuming hundreds of megawatts of power and billions of dollars in infrastructure investment.
Right.
Right now, a lot of that unprecedented computational power is being used to generate text, write code, or power increasingly smart chatbots. But what if the ultimate measure of this massive technological boom isn't just how smart a chatbot can get? What if the true test of this era is whether we can harness that staggering computational power to accelerate those quiet, painstaking medical breakthroughs, like the brain cancer therapy we just discussed? How do we ensure that our technological priorities are actually aligning with our human ones?
That is a heavy but incredibly necessary thought to leave on. We are currently building the most powerful tools in human history. We just have to decide what we're actually building them for. Thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. Stay informed, stay curious, and we will see you next time.